Just imagine a whole continent vanished beneath the Indian Ocean, home to some forgotten, super advanced civilization. That's the story of Lemuria, a lost world that's way more myth than history, but one that still totally fascinates us. So today, we're going to dive into its incredible story. So, how in the world does a pretty straightforward scientific puzzle from the 1800s, all about lemurs of all things, morph into this sprawling modern myth about a secret city tucked away inside a mountain in California? Let's trace this unbelievable journey of an idea. You know, our story doesn't kick off with mystics or some ancient dusty text. Nope. It starts with a 19th century scientist who was just trying to solve a very real mystery with the best science he had at the time. So you've got this British zoologist, Philip Sclater, and he's completely stumped. He's looking at this really weird biological puzzle. Fossils of lemurs, which are native to Madagascar, are also popping up in India. I mean, how on earth did they cross the gigantic Indian Ocean? His solution was actually pretty elegant. He proposed this massive, now sunken landmass that once connected Madagascar and India. He even gave it a cool name, Lemuria. And for a while, this was a totally plausible scientific idea. That is, until the theory of plate tectonics came along and showed that the continents themselves actually drift, which gave us a totally different and now accepted answer. But just as the scientific community was moving on, the idea of Lemuria was far from dead. In fact, it was about to get a second life, a much, much weirder one, in a world full of spirits, secret masters, and the hidden history of all humanity. So the concept gets snatched up by occultists, and the most famous one was Helena Blavatsky and her Theosophical Society. You have to remember, this was a time of huge industrial change, and a lot of people were looking for some kind of spiritual meaning outside of science or traditional religion. And the Theosists? Well, they served it up by transforming Lemuria into the mystical homeland of humanity's ancient ancestors. And boom, just like that, you can see the complete flip. Lemuria wasn't about lemurs anymore. Not at all. It was now a centerpiece in a brand new spiritual history of the world, the cradle of a lost, giant race that supposedly came way before even the famous Atlantis. Okay, this is where the story gets really wild. The legend itself starts to go on a strange migration of its own. It travels from a sunken continent in one ocean all the way to a very specific and very real mountain in America. What's so interesting here is that you can literally watch this idea evolve over 60 years. It starts as this kind of vague concept, and then it travels across the globe, getting more and more specific until it finally zeroes in on one single spot. So first, the Theosophists basically just pick up the sunken continent and move it. They shift it from the Indian Ocean, where the lemurs actually were, to the huge and, back then, much more mysterious Pacific Ocean. And from there, it's like a laser pointer finding its target. The legend gets anchored to this one single mysterious peak. Thanks to a few key books and articles, Mount Shasta in Northern California becomes the official modern-day hideout for the survivors of lost Lemuria. So, what's the story today? Well, according to modern lore, there's an entire thriving civilization that exists deep inside that mountain, completely hidden from our world. Believers describe this perfect utopian society. Their city is supposedly named Telos, and it's home to 1.5 million of these beings. They're masters of crystal technology, which they use to power everything and stay completely hidden from us. They're basically the keepers of ancient knowledge, saved from the disaster that sank their home continent. But a legend like this doesn't just survive on theory. It's fueled by some really bizarre stories of strange encounters, weird sightings, and mysterious disappearances all around the mountain. I mean, take the strange story of this prospector, J.C. Brown. He claimed he found a tunnel that led to an ancient city filled with gold and giant mummies. He kept it a secret for 30 years, but on the very day he was finally going to lead an expedition to prove it, poof, he vanished without a trace. And if you thought that was out there, listen to this one. A writer named M. Dorial claimed that back in 1931, 2 Lemurians met him in Los Angeles, strapped some weird device to him, and flew him like a rocket right to a secret entrance on the side of Mount Shasta. So through this absolutely bizarre evolution, Lemuria has earned its spot in the pantheon of legendary lost worlds that just continue to capture our collective imagination. But it's in a really unique position here. I mean, you have Atlantis, which came to us from the ancient philosophy of Plato, and its Pacific cousin, Mu, that has roots in 19th century archaeology. But Lemuria? It has this singular distinction of being the only one that started out as a modern, even if it was later disproven, scientific theory. And that's really the key takeaway from this whole journey. Even when a theory gets completely erased by new science, the story it creates can be so powerful that it takes on a life of its own, adapting and evolving in ways its creator never could have dreamed of. Yeah, Lemuria was a scientific dead end, but it opened a doorway in our imagination that has just never closed. It really makes you wonder, what is our fundamental need for these stories, these tales of hidden wisdom, advanced ancestors, and vanished greatness? What does that really say about us?